The quiet hum of a jet engine. Sounds of passengers, a faint cough. The rustling of magazine pages. The click of a seatbelt being unbuckled is heard. Then another click, and another. A sudden scream. A sharp metallic sound, the sound of a sword being drawn from its scabbard. As quick, dark, fleshes appear. Terrified faces. A hand gripping the hilt of an ornate sword. The cockpit. March 31st, 1970. Japan Airlines Flight 351. A Boeing 727. A routine domestic flight from Tokyo to Fukuoka. 129 passengers. The flight was supposed to last 1 hour. A young man stands in the aisle. He raises a katana sword high, but just 7 minutes after takeoff, the routine flight turned into a medieval nightmare. The hijackers didn't use guns. They didn't use bombs. They used weapons that should have been in a museum. A gleaming samurai sword blade trembles in front of a flight attendant's face. 9 men, ... armed with katana swords and Japanese daggers. This was the strangest hijacking in history, and the reason behind it was stranger than fiction. Documentary title: Sword of Revolution. The hijacking of Flight 351 in 1970. Japan was an economic miracle, but beneath a gleaming surface, the nation was fractured. A new generation, angry at capitalism, angry at American influence, dreamed a revolution. Students wearing helmets and carrying red banners. They were known as the Red Army Faction, a radical, communist student group. They believed that peaceful revolution was impossible. They wanted to set the world ablaze, and to that, they needed a base. But their plan wasn't to seize a bank or a government building. Their plan was far more audacious. They decided to become the world's first international and to launch their global revolution from the most unlikely place imaginable. At 20,000 feet, the hijackers, led by Takamasa Shirobi, announced their takeover. This plane is hijacked. They used their swords to intimidate the passengers, tying the male passengers to their seats. One of the hijackers bursts into the cockpit, brandishing his sword. They forced the captain to change course. The destination? Not Fukuoka. They demanded something unbelievable. Take us to Cuba. The stunned captain stares at the hijacker. There was one problem. The 727 was designed for short-haul flights. It didn't have enough fuel to cross the Pacific. Their demand was impossible, but it was also just the beginning of their deception. After tense negotiations, the hijackers allowed the plane to land in Fukuoka to refuel. There, in a bizarre gesture, they released 23 passengers, mostly women, children, and the elderly. The plane takes off again, leaving Japan behind. Now, the hijackers revealed their true destination. Cuba was never the target. It was just a diversion. The real destination was Pyongyang, North Korea. Why North Korea? Herein lies the madness. This wasn't a hijacking for money, nor was it for a prisoner exchange. It was an armed political migration. The Red Army believed that North Korea was the true communist paradise on Earth. They thought Kim Il-sung would welcome them as heroes. Their plan was to go there, receive military training, and then build a base for the Red Army to spread the communist revolution throughout the world, starting with Asia. They hijacked a plane to request political asylum. But the drama wasn't over. The plane flew through South Korean airspace. The Japanese government sent a desperate message. They're heading your way. The South Korean authorities, in a desperate attempt to salvage the situation, concocted a scheme straight out of a spy movie. South Korea turned off the lights at Gimpo Airport in Seoul. At a nearby airbase, they hastily tried to make it look like Pyongyang. They put up signs that read, "Welcome to Pyongyang." Soldiers dressed in North Korean uniforms and drove trucks while shouting communist slogans. The plane lands at the fake airport. The plane landed. But the hijackers were clever. They looked out the windows. It was too quiet. "Where are the pictures of the great leader, Kim Il-sung?" one of them asked. Then they saw something. A Northwest Orient Airlines plane, ... sitting on the North Korean tarmac. The ruse was exposed. A 3-day standoff began in Seoul. The hijackers, trapped and furious, became increasingly desperate. The Japanese government realized it had to offer them something they couldn't refuse. A Japanese man in a suit walked steadily toward the plane. The solution was noble. And as insane as the hijacking itself, Japan offered a hostage exchange. Japan's Vice Minister of Transport, Shinhito Yamamoto, volunteered to become the sole hostage in exchange for the release of all the remaining passengers. The stunned passengers run from the plane. Yamamoto climbs the stairs, bows to the hijackers, and enters the aircraft. On April 3rd, the doors closed. The plane took off again, carrying the 9 hijackers, their swords, and 1 high-ranking hostage. They crossed the 38th parallel and disappeared behind the Iron Curtain. North Korea welcomed them, but not as the revolutionaries they dreamed of being. Hostage Yamamura was released a few days later. But the hijackers, they became permanent guests in a gilded cage. They lived the rest of their lives in North Korea as propaganda tools, teaching Japanese to spies. They had fled Japan with samurai swords to find paradise, but found themselves trapped in a false utopia. Most of them died in exile. It was the strangest hijacking in history, driven by a desperate ideology, a leap of faith that landed them in a land they could never leave.